Earlier this week, we reported that Donald's hands continue to be bandaged. He has swollen ankles, and he's been using layers of makeup trying to cover something up, although we're not quite sure what it was. Now, after days of viral speculation and widespread concern about the health of the sitting president of the United States of America, the White House has finally weighed in. Because remember, we were told that the bruising on Donald's head was because he shakes hands too much. So now, what is the official story? Or I should say, what is the new official story coming out of the White House press room? Well, it isn't exactly reassuring, and how could it possibly be? Because the news has been delivered by one of the most mendacious people on the planet, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who took to the podium this afternoon in an attempt to put rumors to rest. Take a look at this.
I know that many in the media have been speculating about bruising on the president's hand and also swelling in the president's legs. So, in the effort of transparency, the president wanted me to share a note from his physician with all of you today. In recent weeks, President Trump noted mild swelling in his lower legs. In keeping with routine medical care and out of an abundance of caution, this concern was thoroughly evaluated by the White House medical unit. The president underwent a comprehensive examination, including diagnostic vascular studies. Bilateral lower extremity venous Doppler ultrasounds were performed and revealed chronic venous insufficiency, a benign and common condition, particularly in individuals over the age of 70. Importantly, there was no evidence of deep vein thrombosis or arterial disease. Additionally, recent photos of the president have shown minor bruising on the back of his hand. This is consistent with minor soft tissue irritation from frequent handshaking and the use of aspirin, which is taken as part of a standard cardiovascular prevention regimen. This is a well-known and benign side effect of aspirin therapy.
Okay. So she's still going with the handshaking thing. Sure. Listen, I believe that the fact that they felt the need to change the narrative here suggests that there's something else going on. Why do I think that? Well, because Caroline Leavitt is I was going to say the biggest liar on the planet, but we all know that's not true. One of the biggest liars on the planet. The woman does not believe in transparency. All she does is lie to reporters' faces and mock them and treat them with contempt. So there's literally no reason to believe their version of this story. I mean, look, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I think we know enough by now to know that if Caroline Leavitt is telling us something is benign and not at all to be concerned about, we should probably be very concerned. So let's break this down. Now, again, just make it as clear as humanly possible. I'm not a doctor or a medical professional of any kind. Nobody here at Mary Trump Media is, but we know how to do research. So we're here to bring you information based on that research. First, Donald's ankles. At the FIFO event, the swelling in them was really hard to miss. Levitt claims that Donald was recently diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency, or CVI, which is a circulatory issue that causes swelling. But this is the problem with saying that while trying to downplay it. Swelling of that nature, that is not insignificant swelling of the ankles, doesn't show up in the early stages of CVI. According to the Cleveland Clinic and Provascular MD, the kind of visible leg swelling we saw in that photograph of Donald just a couple of minutes ago only appears in stage 3 or later. This is a fact that Twitter users are already speculating about, with user Republicans Against Trump stating the following, quote, "Make no mistake about it, Donald wasn't just diagnosed with CVI, a serious condition that can lead to heart failure. Visible leg swelling means he's already at stage 3, not the beginning. He likely knew for months, probably even before the election, and only disclosed it now because the symptoms became impossible to hide. Donald must release all his medical records now," unquote. Okay, I don't know if Republican Against Trump is a doctor either, but that information is factually accurate. If Donald is at stage 3 of CVI out of 6, and again, I don't know that. We're just basing it on obvious symptoms that have been documented. He's not in the early stages of CVI. He is on his way potentially to ulceration, skin breakdown, and a significantly higher risk of heart complications. According to the National Library of Medicine, CVI risk factors for men include those who are 55 or older, those who are obese and lead a sedentary lifestyle, and family history. So, at the very least, this diagnosis shows that Donald, who, hope you're sitting down, he's not 6'3", and he doesn't weigh 224 pounds, and he does not have the physique of an athlete, which is what we have been told by White House doctors in the past and people like Caroline Levitt. All the more reason not to trust them now. Because all of that information about Donald's health that has been released in the past is demonstrably untrue. So there is literally no reason for them to tell the American people the truth because they've never had to. So Republicans against Trump and others who have massive Twitter followings can demand all they want that Donald Trump release his medical records, but there is literally nothing on this planet to lead us to believe that anything in those records will be factually accurate. Okay, so let's go down the list. There's the issue of Donald's hands, because Caroline Levitt claimed that the bruising was consistent with minor soft tissue irritation from frequent handshaking, which has been made worse by Donald's supposed aspirin regimen for cardiovascular prevention. Let's check something out. This is what his hand looked like earlier this week. That doesn't seem like a handshake bruise. I mean, first of all, you can't even see the bruise because it's covered up with what looks like stage makeup. Anybody who's ever shaken a hand knows that the pressure hits the palm and the webbing, not the back of your hand near the knuckles, unless something really weird's going on. Sure enough, people on Twitter were quick to point that out as well. Here's a photo of Donald shaking hands. The affected area is nowhere near where the other person's hand would touch in a standard handshake. I mean, I could understand his getting away with this in a culture that does not have people shaking hands to greet each other. But we all know how handshakes work. And I don't know about you, but I have never once in my life gotten a bruise from shaking somebody's hand, even if they wanted to give me one. So let's, even though I don't think we have to, let's take the White House press secretary at her word, and let's say that aspirin does make bruising more likely. Why are we only seeing it on one hand? Like, why in that specific spot? Why does it look more like an IV, the site of an IV injection, or an impact bruise than anything caused by handshaking? Lie, deflect, wait for it to blow over. But if Donald's body is deteriorating in front of our eyes, and that deterioration is being well documented by cameras, I don't think their lies can keep up with what people are seeing. Donald, as I just said, has never actually released complete medical records that are accurate and factually based to the American people. He has not released any records about his physical or mental health that the American people have any reason to trust. He has surrounded himself with charlatans who are willing to lie on his behalf. Why, I do not know. But I don't know if you remember when the disgraced former White House doctor Ronnie Jackson, known as the Candyman for his liberal use of controlled substances among White House staff, said with a straight face that Donald was so healthy he'll probably live to be 200 years old. Or his quirky doctor from New York City who, in the lead up to the 2016 election, said that Donald would be the healthiest person to become president in American history, and that all of his tests were positive. Okay, first of all, how do you know how healthy James Madison was. That's a statement that cannot be made, that somebody is more healthy than other people you've never met and who are all long dead. And then, of course, there's that thing he said about all of Donald's tests being positive, if that's a good thing, as if that's a good thing. Medical doctors should know that in medical tests, you don't want your tests to be positive, you want them to be negative. So, yeah, why would we trust any medical professional who has anything to say about Donald's health or lack thereof? And then there is the ongoing topic of Donald's mental health and acuity. At the press conference, Levitt was asked about a response from Donald that has gone viral over the last couple of days. He actually claimed during a press conference, unbidden, like for no reason, he claimed that his uncle John, my great uncle, who taught at MIT for many, many years, had as one of his students Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. This clip took off because it was also part of a very long rant showing Donald's real time mental decline. This particular gaffe was fact checked over and over again as false. And by the way, that was not the only false claim that Donald made here about my Uncle John or his Uncle John, my great Uncle John. Okay. First of all, it begs the question why Donald thinks that it's a cool thing that his uncle taught a man who became a murderer. Although he didn't, that wasn't true. But his Uncle John did not have degrees in physics and math and something else. My great Uncle John was an electrical engineer. Okay. He also was not the longest serving professor at MIT. And of course, Kaczynski never attended MIT. The entire conversation Donald claims he had with his Uncle John about Kaczynski could not possibly have happened because my great Uncle John died at least 10 years before Kaczynski became infamous. When Levitt was confronted with all of these facts, she did what she always does. She lied, she denied reality, and she looked like an idiot in the process, as always. Check it out.
So on Tuesday, the president told a very detailed story about his uncle, noted scientist John Trump, and Theodore Kaczynski, the late Unabomber. He said that Dr. Trump taught Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski was not identified as the Unabomber until 1996, 11 years after John Trump passed away. It would have been impossible for John Trump to have ever discussed the Unabomber with the president. So what was he talking about? And I have one follow-up.
Andrew, with so many issues going on in the world, I'm a little bit surprised you would ask such a question, although I'm not sometimes coming from you, I will say, but I'm willing to give you an answer. Nevertheless, the president's uncle did, in fact, teach at MIT. He was a very intelligent professor. The president's very proud of his family. In fact, the president has a letter from his uncle on the MIT letterhead that sits in the Oval Office dining room. Maybe we'll let you see it sometime.
There's that contempt we've come to know and love from Levitt. So basically, how dare you ask a question that I'm not going to answer, even though I'm going to lie to you and tell you that I'm going to answer it by not answering it. That's what we get from that White House press secretary. But again, we've come to expect that. Here's where things get interesting, though. As Twitter account at Capitol Hunters pointed out, quote, people missed the likely explanation for Donald's bizarre ramble yesterday when he falsely said his uncle taught the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski. Donald is under huge stress right now about the Jeffrey Epstein files, and it's Epstein who claimed that he studied with the Unabomber, unquote. That is real. I think it's an interesting theory, and according to a 2019 interview with Mother Jones, Epstein's longtime friend, Stuart Pavar, said Epstein used to brag about studying math with the Unabomber. Here's what he said word for word. Quote, Jeffrey once told me that he studied math with the Unabomber. Did you know that? Yeah. Jeffrey told me that he studied math at UCLA with the Unabomber, who was a math teacher, unquote. Here's the uncomfortable question, though. Did Donald just accidentally rip off a lie Jeffrey Epstein used to tell? I mean, if so, that's a little unsettling because it suggests something, doesn't it? This is Donald, who's currently trying to bury the Epstein files and shut down every line of inquiry about who knew what and when after promising for over a decade that he was going to let us know everything there was to know about who knew what and when. Parroting a lie he can only have heard from Jeffrey Epstein, somebody from whom he claims he had very little to do. I'm not saying Donald's doing any of this on purpose. I'm not saying that he's even aware of the connection or that he even knows he's lying at this point. But when somebody like Donald is under the kind of pressure he's under, which by the way is the kind of pressure he has never been under before in his life, when he is already clearly suffering from cognitive decline and has been for years, if you're paying attention, and the walls are closing in, which quite frankly is something he had no reason to expect would ever happen. Why? Because he has been protected by smarter, more powerful people his entire life, and he has never been held accountable. These are the kind of unconscious truths or unconscious fantasies or the inability to stay oriented as to time and place that we are starting to see. As we know, Donald engages in several defense mechanisms, the most prevalent of those being projection. He will often tell the truth about himself by lying about another person. Most obvious example, Crooked Hillary. Here's another one, Sleepy Joe. Right? Both of those things are true of him and were not true of the people he lied to us about. Donald has always believed in his overriding ability to control the narrative, and that's not happening anymore, especially with this Jeffrey Epstein debacle. So think about it. How does he regain control? Can he regain control? And if he is aware on some level that that's not something that's possible, that the unthinkable is now his new reality, things are only going to get worse for him. And that's where I'm going to leave you. Because we've seen this pattern too many times to ignore it. And it's well past time that we stop allowing people in Donald's orbit to lie to our faces, to pretend that our legitimate questions are deserving of nothing but contempt, and that we just have to trust the least trustworthy regime in American history. We are clearly watching a president in visible decline. We're not going to get transparency from these people, so it's time for us to stop even bothering asking for it. But we shouldn't let any of this drop because you know that that's what they want. They will continue they will continue changing the subject. They will continue making up more outrageous lies. Donald will continue to do things that are even more extreme. So people forget what is happening right now. But what is happening right now could well be the beginning of the end for Donald's iron grip on MAGA and more specifically, the QAnon conspiracy theorists. One of the main reasons it's important for us not to let this go is because if MAGA or significant portions of MAGA and QAnon start to turn against Donald, then the influencers, the Republican politicians who rely on those groups to keep them in power are going to have a very difficult decision to make. Whose side are they on, after all? And if they're paying attention, it's not going to be Donald Trump's. Please take a second and like and share this video. Be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.